Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod. The U.S. Treasury hacked by China, what the threat could have uncovered with cybersecurity expert Theresa Payton.
Not only do cybercriminals not take a holiday, they typically speed up their attacks in the days and weeks leading up to what they know to be a country's holidays.
Congress's least productive year in decades.
This is just too easy. I'm not going to say anything. It's just too easy.
Our Emily Wilkins on turning the page to the 119th Congress.
Are we going to see a little bit more Republican unity than we saw in the last few weeks when they were trying to fund the government?
Plus, is it a frog? Is it a metaphor?
It's a right-wing mascot.
CNBC technology reporter Steve Kovac on Elon Musk's fresh X avatar, and how another high-profile CEO navigates a relationship with the president-elect.
He needs China. Tim Cook needs China, but he also needs to dodge these tariffs.
Then last-minute legal challenges to New York's looming congestion pricing surcharge.
This is such an elitist way of looking at it, and the richest people you talk to have no problem with this.
It is Tuesday, December 31st, 2024, New Year's Eve. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue it, please.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick along with Joe Kernen. Andrew is off today. Here we go. It's the last day of the year, the last trading day of the year. I will say that this morning was a little difficult getting in here.
There's something going on out
in Times
here.
Square today.
Yeah, there's fences. We can't get
I walked
here.
From
can't get there
several
from
blocks
here.
Away.
You did? You had some fun? Yeah.
Well,
there's some interesting characters on the way.
That's right. I thought it was going to be super safe with the
You had someone
presence.
with you, luckily.
I met him. I walked by myself for a few blocks before I found him. Thankfully, I found him before the other person found us.
Right. My whole, I bruise on the inside. My whole body's. I'm a karate man. I'm ready for anything. I had to walk a couple blocks too, but
I have to give a shout out to
happening?
Eli,
Some balls dropping or
there's
something?
There's something right out here.
Out here.
I think there's a lot of confetti that is planned for later today. They did a test of it over this past week, and they're dropping thousands of pounds of confetti. There's the ball. You get to see it.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty cool. It's the last year for that ball. But what I was saying, actually, so I saw the cover of the journal and parts of it online. Mm-hmm. Best 2 years in a long time, back to back, since the 90s, which I remember that we had like 3 years
in a row in the 90s.
20 or 30% plus. So even though we're having a little bit of, backing and filling and, some rotation towards the end of the year here, it's still going to, unless we had a really bad day today, it's going to end up being a pretty good year. Let's talk about your favorite story here, and you need to
I read every detail on this.
You need to fill me in. When? Okay, so
next week, January 5th is when it's set.
And what time do you get hit with this?
All times. I think there's from 5 a.m. to something else. If you're before 5 a.m., maybe you pay a lesser fee.
Let's talk about it, and we'll talk at the end.
I was a little confused. I was reading some stuff on it yesterday.
It reminds me of California. It's just like government run amok because of their own incompetence. So they've already spent the money, so they need to do this.
They spent a lot of money, like over $1 billion.
But they need to do this to continue the terrible management of the mass transit system that we have here. That's what they're supposedly using it for. No one pays. No one pays for
more than 50% of people who are riding buses are not paying for it.
They're not paying.
Now. So, and there's something like 30%.
But they're trying to force people
that aren't paying.
They're trying to force people into these dangerous and ineffective mass transit systems, right? By making it harder to drive in. The whole thing
more
is
expensive to drive in. The biggest problem I have with it is this is such an elitist way of looking at it, and the richest people you talk to have no problem with this because it's not going to impact them. They have drivers and they don't mind paying an extra $9 every time they come through.
This is Kathy.
And it's a way to make less traffic for the richest.
But they need it for the money, right?
Because they need it for the money, but that's, you could have spent the money that you spent implementing this system to try and make sure people were actually paying on mass transit to go through some of those issues. It's just a really elitist
But the
thing.
congestion's bad
It's not going to
also.
stop you and I. We'll be here. And the plus side of it is they say it will mean that there'll be a lot less traffic because you've made it so that other people can't afford
You
to be
still
here.
will get run
If
over
you're
by a
really rich, it's
scooter
okay.
in one of the bike lanes, and there will
you'll
still be
have
traffic because of the half the street
And the
is for
restaurants-
buses.
Well, and the other half is for restaurants.
Right,
That they
it's for
started setting up
restaurants.
during COVID. Right, like and I understand having the lanes for buses. That makes more sense to me than the pedestrian lanes and like you've said.
When's the last time you were on a bus?
I couldn't tell you.
I couldn't either.
Couldn't tell
New
you.
York Governor Kathy Hochul, this is what we're talking about, said a congestion pricing plan is going to launch on January 5th as scheduled after a federal judge largely rejected New Jersey's challenge to the plan. But a lawyer for New Jersey is arguing that the plan cannot proceed while issues in the court fight remain unresolved. It raises a possibility that the plan could be held up in court. The judge ruling yesterday dismissed most of New Jersey's concerns about the impact from the new toll, but said a federal transportation agency must provide further explanation about its decision-making. The judge wants more information on how New York is going to mitigate the effects from drivers shifting their commutes and parking to other areas in an attempt to avoid the toll. The judge didn't address whether the toll could start on January 5th, so the New York governor is moving forward with the plan, but set deadlines for more court filings in January and February mean its legal future could be in jeopardy. It's another kind of weird example of government existing for itself rather than for the people that it was set up for in the first place to try to. This is fully about the government's interests. It has nothing to do with people's.
I'm opposed to this. I will try and present some of the other arguments because Andrew's not here, Kathy Wild's not here, the people who are in favor of this who point to it working in London and saying it's been pretty effective in cutting back at traffic there. They say that it's. I'm trying to think of all the reasons that they use for why this is a good idea. But
you're not doing very well at thinking of them.
I know it's hard for me because I disagree with the basic premise of it. I understand congestion is an issue here, but again, by just making it so expensive and forcing out the people who are actually doing a lot of the work down here, and if you're also making the argument that people should be coming back into the office, that people should be coming back to work, this seems like a real disincentive to try and convince people to come back down here to work and to make sure that the businesses that are here for lunches and the rest of it. Right.
It's still
it seems like a bad idea to be doing
nowhere
that.
near pre-pandemic though, and it's bad for New Jersey, and
it's not just New Jersey. New Yorkers hate this more than the majority of New Yorkers hate this. President-elect Donald Trump has said he'd get involved. This is supposed to take place now before he's inaugurated. If the court process slows that down, there are questions about whether it will happen under a Trump administration. I'm not entirely sure what he would do, but there's talk about the executive actions that could potentially stop it. So we'll see.
I can't imagine that it really happens.
I thought the same thing. Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, when she stopped it originally before the election, people said, oh, she's only doing it because they don't want to lose seats in the election.
Right.
She said that's not the case and then immediately puts this back in.
This might be a local
election.
story.
It is, but the implications are broader because there are places where they've done it.
So we can convince people there's a reason that we're.
Look, I'm not going to be the one who pays it anyway. But
Right. I know.
Work's going to pay for it. So.
Right. In case you're looking for Elon Musk's account on X, on the social media service, he has changed his name and his profile picture. The photo, the photo
Pepe.
now of I don't know.
What is that?
That's Pepe.
That's Pepe.
Yeah.
But it says it's a photo of a frog. That's not a frog.
That's Pepe the
That
frog.
is a
that's
man
right. Keep
frog.
reading.
Yeah,
Keep
but it's
reading.
not a frog.
It's a meme.
It's not a
It's
frog.
Pepe.
It's a man. It's a muscular man with a frog's face. Named
His name
Pepe.
is now Kekius Maximus?
Kekius Maximus.
But you know what the frog
His
is,
new
right?
handle on is now. Well, you say he's Pepe.
Yeah, it's Pepe. It is Pepe.
One of the.
It's a right-wing mascot.
It is?
Yeah. Since
Right.
since like 2015.
Right
have I
wing.
Yeah.
What does he talk about? What is he?
It's just a meme. It's a right-wing. This was like a big thing in like 2015, 2016.
Well, supposedly the name is of a crypto token that soared, Kekius Maximus. It soared 900% after Musk changed his name on X, and that's according to data from another reptile. It's an amphibian, I guess, a frog. But this is from Coin Gecko. Reptiles are predated amphibians predated the reptiles. That's right. Right, and then they gained their legs, I guess.
Right. They crawled onto land.
Yes.
Yeah.
Crawled onto land.
How did snakes come?
Good question.
They're ancient.
They lost their legs.
And having alligators and crocodiles are like having dinosaurs.
Yeah,
they're cool.
So ancient.
But birds kind of walk around like
birds are dinosaurs.
Their moves are
raptors.
very dinosaur-y. Yeah.
They think the raptors may have had feathers too.
So what are you talking about? Some stock?
Apple.
Oh, wait,
Ever heard of it?
Because okay.
Becky's got to do the thing.
All right, Apple's got a lot to live up to next year after climbing 30% on the back of Apple Intelligence. Steve Kovac is here, if you haven't figured it out yet. He joins us right now with what CEO Tim Cook has to manage as we head into 2025. He's got a full plate, but he always does.
He always does, and here geopolitics is going to play the biggest role here, because at the top of Tim Cook's agenda going into 2025, I got two things to share with you. First of all, it's going to be dodging President-elect Trump's tariffs, as he did for Apple in Trump's first term. And then the second of all, China, specifically getting Apple Intelligence off the ground there. I'll tell you about that in a bit. But first, let's start with tariffs. Trump is coming into office in just a few weeks, promising those blanket tariffs of up to 60% on goods coming out of China. That, of course, would hit Apple the hardest of any of the mega cap companies we talk about so much. Most of Apple's products, including the majority of iPhones, they're made in China. There's some made in India, but not enough to make up for what's going on in China. So how Cook managed to dodge tariffs in the first Trump term, he developed a relatively cozy relationship with the then president, as his peers like Jeff Bezos took it more antagonistic stances. This all culminated in 2019 when Cook gave Trump a tour of an Apple factory down in Texas. That factory had already existed, but Cook showed Trump a new model of Mac computers getting made there, and it became a win-win for both of those guys. Trump got to show Apple making things here in the United States, and the following month, Apple got relief from tariffs on imports from China. Now, ahead of Trump taking office again, Trump said a couple days ago that Cook came and dined with him at Mar-a-Lago. Now, no mention from Apple or Trump himself on what this means for tariffs. But early in the year, here's what I'm going to be paying attention to. Any announcements from Apple related to job creation or manufacturing here in the U.S. that can be kind of seen as a give to Trump so they can avoid some tariffs. Next, let's talk about China here. There's still competition on the hardware side from homegrown competitor Huawei, but almost more important than that, you want to look at what Apple needs to do to get the government to approve Apple Intelligence so it can launch on iPhones in the country. The government there has to approve AI models before they're allowed to launch. I asked Tim Cook about that last earnings. He was coming fresh off one of his most recent trips to China. He did not have a comment at the time, though previously he had told me they were working and they're in discussions with the Chinese authorities over there. Apple, of course, needs Apple Intelligence to launch in China for Chinese consumers who are more obsessed with tech specs and really are waiting for those AI features to launch. And it may have to partner with a company like Baidu for artificial intelligence, since OpenAI, which is the partnership here in the United States, is blocked in China, guys.
Oh, that gets complicated.
Yeah.
Tim Cook has always been so good at managing difficult relationships. Yeah. He's done this for a long time. Elon Musk is the other person who comes to mind, the other CEO who's going to have to manage the relationship here with President Trump as well as with China. Is this a tougher job, a tougher situation than it was in the last Trump administration?
It's tougher because I think the stakes between China, keep in mind where we were 6 or 7 years ago when I was talking about those first tariffs. The relationship, there was a trade war going on, but we didn't have spy balloons coming over our country. That all happened during the Biden administration. There was this kind of chilly relationship between the United States and China, more so during Biden, I would say. So it's going to be interesting to see how he kind of toes the line, because he needs China. Yeah. Tim Cook needs China, but he also needs to dodge these tariffs. I don't think anyone believes Apple's actually going to be subject to the tariffs. What's more interesting is how do they dodge? What does Tim Cook offer Trump?
You're right. Manufacturing in the United States is a big.
It's not going to happen.
Apple to offer.
It's not. And that factory I talked about in Texas.
Yeah.
That was an existing factory. Apple didn't create that factory. It had been making Mac computers in a small capacity for some time. They created a new model there, so Trump got to see, a new product being made there. But it's not like, Tim Cook waved a magic wand and said, okay, we're going to build some iPhone factories in the United States. That's just not going to happen. By the way, Trump, during his first presidency, also claimed that Tim Cook told him Apple was going to build 3 factories. That never happened. So it's going to be interesting. He might just be able to tell Trump what he wants to hear and get it.
In defense of Pepe and Elon Musk, it originated, Pepe did, as an apolitical character.
Right.
It was co-opted by the alt-right
Yes.
and by white nationalists, even though he's green.
Well, frogs
So-
are,
The
it's
white
okay for a
nationalist
frog.
symbol?
Even though he's green. But despite the character having been co-opted by these hate groups, it was used in protests in Hong Kong, where it was used positively to protest against repression.
Pepe can, I guess, be whatever you
Pepe
want.
can go, yeah. So I'm just saying that I think if you say it's a right-wing meme and Elon Musk if Elon Musk uses it as, then it's gonna sound like you're saying Elon Musk was embracing some
No, but
alt-right white
embracing,
nationalism.
He's embracing the meme, which
is apolitical.
Yeah.
So
Well, what can be apolitical?
Can be apolitical.
Yeah. It started out as
You
just
want
a
it not to be
silly
because
cartoon.
it's Elon Musk. So it's another.
It started out as a silly cartoon.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
And how can he be a white nationalist if he's green?
That's true.
Okay, can I just say the ADL?
Yeah, I know. The ADL has designated as a hate symbol due to it being co-opted by white nationalists.
In the fall of 2006, they say it has to be done in the context. It has to be seen in context. In the fall of 2016, the ADL teamed up with Pepe creator Matt Fury to form a hashtag Save Pepe campaign. to reclaim the symbol from those who use it with hateful
He's not a ninja
intentions.
turtle. He looks kind of like a ninja turtle. Now, are they right wing? Or are they?
No, they're just a kid's cartoon, I think. That was my generation.
Well, definitely not right wing.
No.
Cheese will be next.
Up next on Squawk Pod, Chinese hackers target the U.S. Treasury. Whether documents breached were classified or not, former White House Chief Information Officer Theresa Payton says this is serious.
As we used to say when I worked at the White House for President George W. Bush, small pieces of unclassified information put together a piece of the puzzle that could lead to classified information.
Staying one step ahead of cybercrime in the new year, right after this. You're listening to Squawk Pod from CNBC, today with Joe Kernen and Becky Quick. Here's Becky.
The Treasury Department says that its computers were hacked by a Chinese threat actor in what the department is calling a major incident. Joining us right now with more on this and with cybersecurity risks in the new year is Theresa Payton. She is Fortalice Solutions CEO. And Theresa, thank you for being with us today. We've got a lot to talk about, but let's start with this latest news about the hack at the Treasury Department. Saying this is a major issue, but then saying that there's no threat that they are still in. They don't think that the hackers are still having access to what's taken place there. You know this better than just about anybody. What should we read through this? Because I feel like there's a lot we're not getting from the headlines on this story.
Well, I read the letter that they wrote to report to OMB what had happened, and there will be another letter coming in about 30 days. These investigations take time. The one thing that gives me some optimism about this, that it has been contained, is they mentioned that the affected service, which was a third-party service, which gave basically, if you think about it, almost like a master key to a support person, a trusted person. It basically gave that authenticated master key to these bad actors who have been traced back to China. China has denied it. But the thing they've said is they've actually identified the service, taken it offline, and they're doing the proper remediation steps. So hopefully what that means is the threat actor no longer has persistence, but we do know from the letter that they produced to OMB that documents were accessed. What we don't know is what documents, but they did say it was unclassified.
Right. That's the part that I don't get. These are documents that we shouldn't necessarily care about because they're not classified documents, or this is also a very serious issue if you have a Chinese actor that's gotten access into the Treasury Department.
I think it's very serious because, as we used to say when I worked at the White House for President George W. Bush, small pieces of unclassified information put together a piece of the puzzle that could lead to classified information. And so anything that you steal gives you a sort of, even if it's just an interdepartment memo about new HR policies, that gives sort of patterns of life and inner workings of the operations. It gives names, it gives heads of departments, it gives sort of the tone and the type of vocabulary that's used, which then could be used in subsequent social engineering attacks that are much more sophisticated, targeted, and really bespoke and custom because you've got sort of this knowledge of the inner workings.
You say that a lot of attacks come over the holiday season. That's, I guess, because teams aren't paying as close of attention. There's a lot of people who are off on vacation.
Yeah, this is tough. We've done studies on this and found that not only do cyber criminals not take a holiday, they typically speed up their attacks in the days and weeks leading up to what they know to be a country's holidays. And the reason being is they know that, people are tired and a lot of times teams are taking much needed vacations. There could be skeleton crews on board, and they've got this opportunity to strike when people deserve, kind of a well-deserved break after a really tough year. So we've seen this time and time again. It doesn't mean that the best and the brightest aren't at the helm watching everything. It just means that they're, outmanned and sort of outdesigned by nation state cyber criminal syndicates and others. And it's just tough because you have to get it right every day. Cyber criminals only have to get it right once.
What would you advise CEOs or CTOs, anybody who's watching who maybe is on a board of a company, just what do they need to be prepared for in 2025?
2025, if you thought 2024 was bad, right now people are saying that ransomware is probably going to go down as the worst ever on record since we've been tracking ransomware syndicates in 2024. And yet companies have never spent more on cybersecurity. So we have to ask ourselves some pretty tough questions. Are we really attacking this problem the right way? So what I would say to CEOs and boards is focus on the human user story. What are your customers, your employees, your third-party vendors doing before they engage with technology, while they're engaging with technology, and after they engage the technology? Really understand that human user story, because cyber criminals can teach a master class in human behavior. They know what we're going to do before we do, which is why you see these attacks. The Treasury Department, they went after a third-party support platform. You see the Google two-factor authentication, where they're stealing cookies from going into browser extensions and trying to steal secure cookies. So you're going to see these attacks really accelerate in 2025. Ransomware is here to stay. I also believe ransomware is going to go after AI systems. It will go after smart buildings, potentially locking people in buildings until ransom is paid using the computer systems of the building. Yes. I also foresee the potential for
back that up. That you're talking about commercial buildings that have been turned into smart buildings, kind of being turned against us?
Yes, absolutely. Ransomware syndicates see an opportunity for quick and easy payouts. Very few of them see jail time. We're doing a better job internationally hunting down the ransomware syndicates and trying to bring about justice for all the victims of ransomware, but they're not going to stop. So as companies do a better job not having to pay ransom because their systems are locked up, they are going to move to smart buildings. Smart buildings
Do you think smart buildings are a bad idea in general? Would you work in one? Do you think that we are, doing these things, smart homes, smart cars, all of these things, can we keep ourselves safe?
This is a tough one. I love technology. I love what technology can do to improve businesses, make them more efficient, make buildings, more energy efficient, make them actually more safe from a physical security perspective. You think about all the smart technology we have in buildings. But at the same time, these computer systems are vulnerable to attack. And so this is where CEOs and boards need to assume it is not a matter of if we get targeted in 2025. It is a matter of when we are targeted and when cyber criminals are successful. What will they do? And what are our different types of kill switches around the technology where we can go to manual processes, where we can protect people, protect systems. And this all starts with really understanding that human user story. Don't skip to the technology solution. Don't skip to the security product. Start with that story first. And Becky and Joe will be able to protect the systems and the people, but we have to assume technology will fail us. We have to assume cyber criminals will be successful. And if you design your systems and these kill switches for the systems, knowing that some type of a breach is going to happen, the design will actually be your safety net.
All right, that's good advice. There's something else you raised in the notes that I really hadn't thought of, hadn't heard before, and that's the idea of cryptocurrency being potentially threatened by quantum computing. And I think of crypto kind of being the safest of any way of holding on to currency, of having money. But you bring up an issue I really hadn't considered. Do you want to explain it?
Sure, absolutely. I'll try to do it in 30 seconds or less here. But here's the thing. Blockchain and cryptocurrency, what's great about it is based on today's computing power, it would take you about millions of years and lots of supercomputers to really think through how to break all of that encryption, to be able to just sort of writ large steal cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and things like that off of the blockchain out of cryptocurrency vaults. The different attacks that you hear about today typically happen when it has to leave the blockchain to be consumed, to be turned into fiat currency or to move from platform to platform. Those are the typical hacks that you hear about today, stealing somebody's wallet. But you don't typically hear about like the blockchain and the cryptocurrency encryption being cracked wide open. With quantum computing, especially with Google's announcement on Willow and them saying something that used to take an eternity to do now takes 5 minutes, the encryption is basically just one big old math problem. And now with quantum computing, you're going to be able to basically decrypt the encryption of blockchain and cryptocurrency. Now, a lot of experts say, oh, there's no cause for alarm. We probably have about 10 years. What I would tell you is based on my career in studying technology and cyber criminal syndicates is that 10 years, cyber criminals are always innovating. They are going to find a way to cut that time in half, maybe by 3/4. And so we should be preparing now, especially since cryptocurrency tends to be decentralized in nature. There's not a body deciding how cryptocurrency is created, consumed. You don't have international standards. You don't have a lot of regulations. So we need to be talking about this now, or we're never going to be ready.
Okay, Theresa, it gives us a lot to think about as we head into a new year. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Will there be anything left in my bank account?
No, your bank would get hacked first. Yeah. It's just if that's where the money is. Right. It's Willie Sutton's school of thought.
I'm going to check it after we go to break.
Coming up, Congress is not very productive 2024 and a busy to-do list in 25. We'll dig into it next.
Said without commentary.
That's you without commentary.
Welcome back to Squawk Pod with Joe Kernen and Becky Quick.
Stand by, Joe. Here's Mike. Cue.
2024 is going to go down as one of the least productive years for Congress in decades. This is just too easy. I'm not going to say anything. It's just too easy. Emily Wilkins joins us now with more. Hey, Emily.
Hey, Joe, I know, right? Well, with the new 119th Congress coming in on Friday, the 118th is all but officially over, and it really was one of the least productive in recent years. It's a good time to have a look back on it. So in the past 2 years, which includes the session of Congress, 501 bills were enacted and became law. Now, this is either on their own or part of a larger package, according to GovTrack. And look, 501, it might sound like a lot. It is still dwarfed by the last several years when you saw more than 1,000 bills pass each session, including the 116th, where, if you remember, of course, it was a split government. Now, a number of factors have led to this last Congress being less productive. That includes several weeks battling over the speaker, plus struggles with a divided party. Daniel Schuman, executive director of the American Governance Institute, who works with GovTrack, said there could be some of the same issues in the next Congress.
The reality is that Republicans in the House are split, and that there is a faction of Republicans that want to go even further with some things. And there's a bunch of Republicans that are more traditional Republicans that have more sort of traditional notions of what they want to do. And as a consequence, mustering a majority in the House to actually do things is going to be very difficult.
With Republicans in control of both chambers of the House and the Senate and the White House, lawmakers like Congressman Chip Roy are hoping that they are going to have a more productive next 2 years.
Now we're going to have the House, the Senate, and the White House. Now is going to be the time to put up or shut up. And so we'll see what Republicans can do.
Republicans already have a very ambitious agenda for the first 100 days. They want to do a bill that includes border security and energy policy. And then once that's done, another package on taxes. And of course, in the meantime, they're going to have to deal with the debt limit, fund the government, and confirm Trump's cabinet. So, Joe, of course, the big question here is, are we going to see a little bit more Republican unity than we saw in the last few weeks when they were trying to fund the government?
I guess it's the age-old question. What some people want Congress to do versus what other people don't want them to do. And I mean, border security, it's hard for me to say that wouldn't be a positive. But my point was, and I can't help myself, if every market strategist or person that has any experience in business, regardless of political affiliation, if they all say, we want gridlock, or the market's up because it's predicting gridlock, or the best scenario for the market is gridlock, how come Congress can't get the message that maybe they do more harm than good most of the time?
I mean, Joe, it's a good question. And you kind of look at all of these bills individually. I mean, everything that passed, it clearly had bipartisan support. It clearly had wide buy-in. And a lot of these bills, they go through a process where they're actually expedited. And so you have more than a bare majority voting for them. At the same point, it does depend exactly what gets passed, right, what that looks like. And there are different ways of measuring the productivity of Congress. A couple people I spoke with, they said, you can measure it by the size of the bills that's passed, the overall impact that it actually has. They've noted that, some Congresses, if you have a divided country, a Congress that doesn't actually get a lot done is reflecting the will of the American people, because the American people can't agree on much.
That's right.
It's just that after a while, you have some pretty big problems that build up.
I guess.
If you look at immigration or you look at other issues.
Things like that. Yeah. But if all you're going to do is just throw money at a problem, you're just adding to the problem. That was Reagan's. He was a president long ago who said the worst sentence in the English language: "Hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you." So. And the uniparty, the bipartisan bills, the uniparty bills might be the worst of all. Emily, thank you. Said without commentary. We got to bring
That's
back.
You without commentary.
We got to bring back my commentary.
Opinion.
Right opinion. Right. To the right.
I was going to say, you're right.
Okay.
But it is interesting. Look, I think the problem becomes when you have parties that elect people that are far one direction or the other. It's really hard to get a bipartisan bill. And I think most Americans...
I'd like bills to reverse previous bills. I'd like them to
but you know who
maybe
hates
pass
that?
A lot of those.
CEOs who are leading companies who just want some certainty in the outlook for what happens. And I would say most Americans are probably in the middle of where you see the extremes of the parties. It's, they want common sense, rationality that doesn't necessarily line up with an entire platform.
There was a time when things were going, I guess you can't really compare it, but government was 7% of GDP. And things seem to be fine.
This is
now
no
it's 25%
question. Yeah, no question
GDP.
that the government needs to be looked at and find ways to shrink that.
Hence Doge.
Right. I think
easier said than done, though.
But dealing with big bureaucracies are never a good thing, whether it's in business, whether it's in government, wherever it may be. But I also think back to the days where you had somebody like a Judd Gregg and an Evan Bayh, a Republican and a Democrat, who could work together and find, just logical people who could sit down at a table and say this makes sense and this doesn't. We will see everybody right back here next year. We're off tomorrow. Make sure you join us on Thursday. Thank you for being with us throughout 2024. We wish you a happy new year, and we will see you again for a great 2025.
We can only hope.
We hope.
And what a year it has been. We are grateful to have had you be a part of it, Squawk Pod listeners. Have a very, very happy and healthy new year. We'll meet you right back here, bringing you the best of Squawk Box in an easy-to-listen-to podcast in 2025. Happy New Year.